Shecky, first of all, thank you so much for having us. We really, really appreciate this.
Well, I want to thank you for coming to my house and we doing this thing for the simple reason I'm out of the business. I'm out of show business. I watch, different things on television and everything. And then every once in a while I put on a tape of mine. And I say to my wife with a tear in my eye, my God, I wasn't bad, And I see the people at the MGM standing up and applauding and everything else. And then I'll watch another thing or something I did on television. And I never had that feeling when I was working. I was always a little kid that they didn't like me, And when Buddy Hackett had that attitude, he was great. But when Buddy Hackett gained a different attitude and says, you better like me, that changed his whole personality. When he went from Chinese routines to nice routines to doing what they call in Israel, the comics would call it drek. And it didn't fit him.
Yeah. Well, so can you tell us what we're interested in is your humble beginnings and how you made the leap from those humble beginnings to actually making a living. And if you could tell, we'd be very interested in numbers too. You don't have to get really specific, but we're really curious how you go from making.
Okay, that's very interesting with me because I never believed I was in show business. I never, in all the years I was in it, I did a job that got me a job in Duluth. I went to Duluth. And I was quitting, then I said Minneapolis, I went to Minneapolis. I was quitting, I didn't want that. Then the Chicago at the Chaperie, I didn't want that, And it went like, that's the way I had a hip hop type of career. But I never thought I really would stay. I never had the feeling that I wanted to do Broadway, although I could sing and dance a little bit. I never had that ambition. I want to do a Broadway show. I want to be Tevye. I want to tell you something. My name is Tevye. This is Anatevka, my home. There's a pogrom going on. That's the Russians don't like the Jews. And I could do all of those things, and I even worked with Zero. And if I were a rich man, I could do it, and they asked me to do it, but I said it wasn't me. I didn't want to go through that thing. A movie, they would come and ask me to do a movie, and I says, no, because after I did a few movies, I didn't like waiting around and the guy say, okay, Mr. Greene, there's your towel, sit over there, we'll call you in 6 hours, But why can't we do it now? No 6 hours, Mr. Greene. And if by chance the stars are finished, we'll get you out. Well, that was not my type of thing either, Television was entirely different because television, you go and you do a Steve Allen show, and you do a Johnny Carson show. And that's what made us big. In those days, those are the shows that made people big. The Steve Allen, the Johnny Carson, the Jack Parr, So consequently, it put aside all of the things of doing a Broadway show or doing a movie because you had so much exposure on these type of shows. But when I got in show business, let's go back again. I was a kid, I sang when I was about 9, 10 years old. I had a voice like Bobby Breen. There's a rainbow on the river, the skies are happy, And then my mother got me, larger shorts, and there's a rainbow on the river. So everybody always wanted me to do this, you'll be in show business. No, I didn't want that. In high school, I told jokes. I was a clown, I started a drama club in high school, but I never put myself in a play. I would be like, we do a Chinese play called Madame Precious Stream, and the Chinese, they use all of the props are people. They didn't have painted props or anything. So I played the part of a rickshaw for 2 weeks, and my wheels were good and everything, and I never really wanted the business. I went into the Navy, came out of the Navy, went to go to school. The first test was an English test. I didn't pass that too well. I couldn't get the the adjectives from the adverbs and all of that stuff. I was having a little trouble with that. Then I went and bought a book. I was going to a place called Wright Junior College, and I bought a book, and it was on rocks and dirt and mountains and things like that. And the girl said, they don't teach geology at Wright Junior College. I said, no, but I want that book, because it was a big book. I said, how much do I get when I bring this book back? And they said, $14. So then I took the book, brought it back, and that was the end of my college. I sold the book for $14. I met, let's see, where was the first place I worked? A place in Chicago that was owned by the boys called the Cuban Village.
And I mean, these guys really owned it, you know. And this is the way the women talked. It wasn't even the owners, you know. So,
this was owned by Sam Giancana and the group from Chicago. And I worked for them and never knew I worked for them. But all through my career at the beginning, these guys took care of me. When I had trouble at the Copa in New York, these guys, they wouldn't let me quit. They wouldn't let him fire me, Julie Podell. I was protected by Hans Christian Andersen, no, by the big guy in Frank Costello in New York and Sam Giancana in Chicago. So I had some pretty good people behind me.
What kind of money were you making back then?
Now that's another interesting thing. I started out to get back at a resort for $10 a week. I went to the resort, it was a weekend, I was still going to college. And I got up on the stage, there was a kid working at Sammy Shore. And they brought me up on the stage, and he was a nervous wreck that somebody's going to take his job. I told a few jokes, sang a song, and the owner came to me, said Schinderman, he says to me, Boychik, want to do me a favor, you want to work here? I said, well, I don't have a knack. No, you'll be, so like a social director they do up in the mountains in New York, you know. Well, I used to hear about the mountains in New York, and the Danny Kays came out here, and this one came out of that one. So I said, okay, so Sammy and I put together a little act. I wrote some stuff, and it was kind of interesting. Went to $20, and they finally got me out of where I was sleeping, where it was very musty, and just, I used to come down, always work, people say, you got a different kind of voice. I had a different kind of voice because it was musty, and it was always mildew, and and I was catching cold. Every other word was, you know. And I want to say, folks, that, you know. But I went from there to, Sammy and I went to New York to break in something. It was like an audition. And I forget the name of the club. They had two kids working there, the Catron brothers. They were very popular in place. We went down in a basement. Now, I caught infectious mononucleosis. And I was in the Wellington Hotel, and he was my friend, I thought. And I said, Sammy, could you please get me water? He said, Sheldon, I'm not going in there. I'm not going to go in there and get your water, because I once got the, not the flu, what the hell, he caught some terrible disease, you know. And I can't get that again. Okay, I said, that's the end of him. So I broke up with him. Went back to college. He teamed up with the guy. The guy broke up with him. The guy called me. We teamed up together, and we started an act. Until he died, I was close to that other guy, Joe Sterling. Joe Shapiro. Sang beautiful, gorgeous voice. And he used to sing, Mammy little baby like brother shortening, Mammy, and I come out doing a cockamamie song, and my song would go over better than his, because with mine there was like a Yiddish shtick of heart to it, you know. If you love me, you know that I'm the one for you. And they'd go, Mammy's little baby love, you know. Well, people like my song.
So you're making $10 or $20?
I made 10, I made 20. Then I went to work. We went to work in a place called Club Alabama, which was one of the first nightclubs in America. It was on Rush Street of Chicago. And I worked for a guy by the name of Harris, who talked like this, is the way he talked, and he raised horses. And he told me that I'm going to be a star. He's break away from this guy, and you'll be a star. but we were getting $150 a week, and I gave him $100 because he was married and I wasn't. So I gave him 100 and I took 50, borrowed 50 from my mother every week. You know, thank God my mother had a job. And if she didn't, I would have got another mother. But from that, I broke up with Joe because I couldn't. We were in a place in up in Illinois, someplace, at a club where they had gambling in the back, and we also had. They gave us a room and everything with cooking. So we went down into town. Oh, Iowa. It was in Iowa, and we went into town, and there was liver that was on sale, and he said to me, "You know what? We're gonna have liver tonight." I said, "No, I don't like liver." He said, "We're having liver tonight." I said, "Joe, I'm very fond of you, but I don't want liver." "Oh, you'll eat liver if I tell you to eat liver." So we came back, and he made the liver. I didn't eat the liver. Got on stage that night. There was a priest sitting in the front. I said, "Father, do you like liver?" He says, "No." He says, "I don't. No, that's the one thing I don't like liver. I don't like any glands or anything of the animal." I said, "This man, you see this man, my partner? He wants me to eat liver." Now, he don't know when we finish the show, "Joe, I'm quitting the act. Just over liver." And I quit the act. That was the end of that. I teamed up with the priest. I worked every Sunday. No.
So you're up to $150 a week.
No, I was up with both of us to $150. Then we went to work in a strip joint. And the man was a Greek man, Tom Terrace, who was delightful. He said, "Listen," and he wouldn't call me Shecky. He said, "Listen, I want to tell you something. Your name is Freddie Greene. What's your first name? Is Freddie?" And it's Fred Sheldon. So he called me, "Your name is Freddie Greene." He said, "Listen, when you break up with this man, I want you to come here because you're going to be my MC." So I broke up with Joe and everything, and I came back and I worked. And it was the type of strip joint you wouldn't believe. He wouldn't let the girls strip. He wouldn't let, maybe one girl would go, "Oh," a little bump. But they were there for like 30 years in this one place. And they used to know everybody in the audience. They'd say, "Hiya, Charlie. How's Annie? Tell her I said hello. Oh, diddle-dee. Oh, Benny. Did you see Charlie's?" That's the kind of strip joint it was, you know.
So what were you making there?
I ended up, but believe this or not, I ended up $175, and he also bought me a Cadillac, which I turned back because he wanted to keep me there to pay every month the Cadillac. He said, "Listen, Fred, I want to tell you something. You're going to stay in this place. You're going to be a big star for me." I said, "Tom, this is not for me. I don't want to work." Then when I quit that job, from left field came somebody else called me. And then I went to work I get a call from an agent, and he says to me, "I need 2 weeks in New Orleans." I says, "I don't want to go to New Orleans." "You got to go. I need 2 weeks at a place called the Preview Lounge." So I said, "Okay." Now I find out Sammy Shor's working there. Sammy Shore has been working there. Now, Al Hurt was the orchestra leader at that time. I came in, I called Sammy Shore. He didn't say, "Come down, I'll show you around," everything. He was very cold to me. And anyway, I went down there. I ended up working, and I ended up getting 15% of the place. They gave me 50. It was right across the street from the Roosevelt Hotel. So Al Hurt was my orchestra leader. I had magnificent musicians. I had my piano player was a professor at Tulane. The drummer was sensational, you know. So, and I never had an arrangement. So when we burned down, this place burned down, not by accident, you know. The owner was a state senator. He owned this place. And he knew people that lit fires. And they'd come to God and say, I want to tell you, I'm looking all over this place. I want to see where the best place where the air comes in. Oh, they're right over there in the corner. That's where the air comes in. Next thing I know, they were burning the place. Started in the corner. Anyway, I got a call from a club in Florida, Martha Ray's Club. She didn't own it. The Skylers owned it. But I went down and I worked with Martha Ray for, oh, well, that was an experience. There was another experience of working with a woman who was known for being a great comedian, and she probably, for not my taste, because she did work with Charlie Chaplin, who was the best, and Monsignor, Verdu, whatever, it was a great, great picture, where he's trying to throw the anchor to drown her and everything else. She was wonderful in films and everything, but she really was not for me a nightclub act. So she'd bring in comics, and every comic that she would bring in, she would write down their material. And now I leave there, I'm gone about 4 weeks, they asked me to come back. And I go to the piano player and I said, I'm going to do the French routine. And they said, don't do that because Martha's doing that. As I wrote that. No, Martha's doing that now. And how about the other stuff, you know? So what she did was they bring in comics and they would do that. It's a wonderful business, show business, you know. Donald Connor once stole my taps. But, no. But it's just a weird, weird business.
Let me, so if we can continue, I want to see where you make that leap from 100.
You want to go to the big money. Okay.
I want to know how you got there.
Okay.
How'd you make that
Okay,
leap from,
I'll tell you how I got there.
And if I just may add, and if you reference television, if you think you had mentioned before that TV was so important to you guys at that time. The exposure on par, Sullivan, Carson, and there's no coincidence that once television came into the picture, it started to feature you guys, right? You know, the appearances, the bookings, they increased. So.
Oh yeah, an agent could sell, you know.
Well, yeah.
Because they've seen that.
I want to know about that big jump where you're making.
Okay. People, when they write about Shecky Greene, a lot of times, this was earlier, they would talk about my salary. People wouldn't talk, he sings, he does this, he does dialects. It was, even when I went into television, nobody ever wrote a dialect thing for me, which is what I do. I do just about every dialect, you know. Swede vaske minute föde, ude vaske skimmetöte, lutfisk. I mean, I do anything, any kind of dialect. But they never wrote that for me. It was always, no, be yourself. Well, myself was doing these things. Now, I go to Vegas. First time I go to Vegas was the Last Frontier Hotel in 1954. Now, Vegas was really nothing at that time. And the place that I worked was the Last Frontier Hotel with Dorothy Shea. Dorothy Shea was a woman called the Beverly Hills, not the Beverly Hills Hillbilly, from New York, the big things in New York. Anyway, they called her the New York Hillbilly. And she was wonderful. I worked with her. They held me over, another show. Worked with Patty Andrews. One sister died. Her other sister took an overdose. She had to leave, so I became the headliner of that show for a while till somebody else came in, Xavier Cugat. They held me over for Xavier Cugat. It was the first time an actress held over in Las Vegas for 16, 18 weeks. Now, the wonderful thing about this, I never had an act. That was the classic with me, is that I would get up, I'd get the audience a little bit, I hope. Sometimes, if you didn't get them, it a little bit longer. But it was like something was refreshing to these people because they were so used to New York comics going A, B, C, D, you know. Funny thing happened to me on the way to work today. I was hit by a bus. I'll tell you the truth, it was an A bus. It was a big bus. It wasn't a little bus. It was a big bus. And these were the comics that were coming into Las Vegas. So from the Midwest, we were a little bit more homey, you know. I would scratch my head when I was talking about my mother. I'd say I said to my mother one time, Ma, why do you make the chicken so greasy? She said, I never make chicken. I just make a pot of grease, I shape it like chicken, you know. So that Hamish type of thing came through because the New Yorkers loved that. A lot of people from New York to this day think that I'm a mountain comic, New York comic, and I'm from Chicago. But I got $1,700, going up to $1,700. Now they sign me for a 3-year contract to go because the last Frontier was closing and the new Frontier was going to open. They just built a new Frontier. So I got a contract between the new Frontier and the Riviera that was being built. I go into the new Frontier, and one of my acts comes in 56, was Elvis Presley. He became my opening act. He was getting big with blue suede shoes and hound dog. And nicest kid, one of the nicest kids, except I don't know what happened later on, because I don't know what happened to me later on with things that I did, drinking and this. And it wasn't me, it was really somebody else. But they gave me, I got $3,500. Then my next jump was 4,500
A week?
a week. Then they couldn't fulfill my contract in the Frontier and the Riviera. So I went in the Riviera and I said, I'll tell you what, this lounge looks just like my club in New Orleans looked, the Preview Lounge. I says, I think I could work this room. Now I got a home now in Beverly Hills. It's a pretty expensive home. Well, at that time, I mean, it was not like the expense today, But I said, I've got to work. I can't just all of a sudden you give me a contract and this is this. So I said, I'll work the lounge. I started working the lounge. Little by little, it took off. Little by little, it took off. Then I went to 6,000. Then I got a call from some people.
I got a call from those people.
And they asked me to come over to Tropicana. Tropicana was closed. So they said, would you work the Tropicana? We'll sign you the contract. I said, you're not open. What am I going to work to? And one of the bosses who put up the money at that time, J.K. Housos, who and I became the closest of friends, he named horses after me after that. He says to me, where are you going to work? I says, I'll work this room. And he says, we're not changing this room. We're not doing one thing in this room. I said, why'd you people call me over? I started to leave. I walked back and I said, Mr. Houses, because the other guys were all bullshit, pardon the expression. I will put a stage, just a board, across this from one part of the bar, the other part of the bar, and let's see if that works. Wasn't going to cost them anything. Then little by little, because nobody ever went that far out to the Strip. That was like unheard of for people to go that far. So little by little, it started, and more and more and more, and the people from the Riviera, more and more and more, and it got bigger. You couldn't get in. 4 maitre d's retired this place. I just wish I would have been partners with him. True story. We had a German maitre d' who I adored, and who later on committed suicide after I left because nobody came in anymore. But 4 guys actually retired from this job. So now they asked me to come back to the Riviera, the lounge, because the Riviera is going in the toilet. And I came back, they gave me $8,500. And that kept on going up until it was $25,000. And one time, I was working with Mr. Sinatra, and Mr. Sinatra says, Shecky, do me a favor, work with me in Florida. I'll pay you the same money you're getting now. I said, Frank, I really don't want to be an opening act anymore, that type of thing. I'd rather stay in the lounges, and so that's more comfortable for me. So he says, please come on over, and Chili called me, we were good friends. I went to work with him at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Florida, and my first check was $4,000. I said, Frank, what is this? He said, that's your money. I said, no, my piano player gets $3,500 plus his expenses. So if I pay my piano player $3,500, Herbie, who deserves more money, but that's what I pay him, and his expenses, there's nothing left for me. He said, what do you mean? I said, I make $25,000 in vacation. He said, you don't make $25,000. You lying? I said, whoa. Picked up the phone, I called up Las Vegas, the Riviera Hotel. Eddie Torres. Hello, Mr. Torres. Could you please inform Mr. Sinatra, standing right here, how much I make a week? And I give him the phone. He says, you do. He's okay. I won't give it to you, but we're going to do a movie, and the movie company will pay you the difference. Well, I ended up doing it. We ended up doing weeks. We did 7 weeks. We did a movie, and that was my love affair with Frank.
That's a great story. Wow.
Well, you know, we had a love-hate relationship, and all the time we'd be together and we'd go to dinner or something. And there's another great story that I'd like to tell, but I'd really like to keep it for CBS. No. One day there was a big falling out with place in a nightclub and people hitting each other and swatting. And he walked down the street, and we were all taking cars behind him, and we're following, and it looked like a marathon. And I put a number on his back. People who don't know what he's walking down the middle of the street for. And we got back up into his suite, and he says, we're quitting everything. He's calling everybody up in the world. He's quitting. No, we're not going to work. This was I forget, we were off on this night. The next night was Saturday night. This was a Friday. I guess Friday comes before. Shabbos gets me a little mixed up. So now he says we're not working, and he's calling all over and he's canceling out things and everything. So I said to him, well, I'm going to go to work. He said, you'd go to work? I said, yeah. You'd work without me? I said, yeah, remember the $4,000 against the $25,000? I'm not getting paid by you. I'm getting paid by the hotel. You would really go on without me? And in those years, you got to understand, I was drinking very badly. So I was not, I make it sound like I'm, an angel, but I was as bad as he was, sometimes worse, with the drinking and the screaming and the yelling. So I said, yeah, I'm going to go on. So Saturday night came, they introduced me, I walked on, and I kept on working. I generally did maybe about 35 to 40 minutes. I kept on working an hour and a half. Saturday night jammed. So I'm just about ready to say to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, you've been wonderful, and I don't know how to tell you this, Mr. Sinatra was sick, and that's why I did a little extra. And I look over, and he's coming on stage. And I says, and well, enjoy yourself, because the king is going to come out, and boom, boom. But now he goes into a blackout, and he sings the summer wind across the side of I never learned any of his songs. Anyway, he goes to punch me as he goes by, and I miss, and I give him a punch. And there's just feeling in his arm all the time. He did the best show I had ever seen him do. I mean, he took control of that audience and everything. Now, show's over. He says, come on, you and I go out alone. I says, is it going to be a good night alone? Or is it going to be a bad night alone? Because we never knew what's going to be a good night or a bad night. Oh, it's a good night. So we go out, we're drinking. He says, why don't more people do that to me? I said, do what? What you did. My mother does that to me. Ava did that to me. He says, when I get crazy like that. And that was a cementing of a relationship. I don't know. I think, I've got to add this. This is very important to that story. The next year, they booked me as a headliner. You could not get in because of the Frank Sinatra situation. Only because of Sinatra did that situation develop. That many people heard about it, the Italians heard about it, this heard about it, and that's what happened. So consequently, he made me a big man in Florida.
I want to sort of veer back to the business of comedy and how important television was to you back in the 50s and 60s. Now, you touched upon at the beginning about Carr and Carson and Sullivan.
Well,
now, I guess my question is, when television, when you had the exposure on these shows, that added up your bookings and the money that you derived from that.
That was everything.
So if you could talk to us about that a little bit.
let me tell you about my life with television. I lived in a depression. I come from that kind of family. I come from a family that we never looked at each other straight in the face. We just looked at each other's shoes to recognize who we were. My mother was brown shoes. My father was blue shoes, so I recognized them. But I come from that kind of a Yiddish background. You know, like somebody says, "You look great." What do you mean I look great? I didn't look great yesterday? You know, it was that type of thing. So I was very fearful of a lot of things, and television scared me a lot. But I saw that every shot that I made, whether it was local, that it's the only way they carried the name. Unless they came to a nightclub, and how many people came to a nightclub? 250 to 500 at the most. You know, but here now you're getting to 1 million, you're getting to 2 million, you're getting on the Sullivan Show, you're getting 6 million. You know, and I never prepared for television. Where guys write and they get writers, I didn't know from that stuff because I always worked in my nightclubs and everything. Hello, how are you? Bum 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 bum, whatever. Okay. So I never got writers. So when I would go to do a Sullivan Show, it was at the last minute. It's a Shecky, I want to ask you, what are you going to do now? Because you really messed me up last time you were on our show. What is it going to be? I says, I really don't know. You don't know? You know. One day, he cut me from 8 minutes to 2 minutes. He's Shecky, I'm cutting you from 8 minutes to 2 minutes because we're running. I said, I can't do 2 minutes. You find something. Well, I took a microphone apart. And I did a piece, with each piece of the microphone, I did something. I turned the microphone upside down and I talked to miners buried under tons and tons of coal. And I would make little jokes like, you weren't hurt, it was soft coal. The bird died, that's a gas. You know, ridiculous things to get the 2 minutes over with, you know. And I'm looking at Sullivan, what do we have this fat bastard on for? So now, as I'm walking off, he grabs me. He said, why did you Shecky, what'd you do this to me for? I said, do what, Ed? He says, the mine disaster. I says, at the time that I was doing this, there was a mine disaster in Nova Scotia. He thought I planned it. You know? So, consequently, I had a contract with him for 12 shows. $3,500 a show. And all the agents told him he paid me too much, and so and so and so. But because of my power in Vegas. The thing that really started my power up was Las Vegas. That here's a kid from no place, you know, without television, without movies or anything, is big in Las Vegas. So I signed that with him, and I did another thing with him. That was bad enough. Now he calls me and he says to me, I want to come, he says, to Vegas. He says, because that's your home. I'm trying to figure out what thing this was. He says, I just got back from Europe. Sylvia and I just got back from Europe. And now I'm bringing some European acts. I says, well, tell him that I came from Germany. Introduce me as Friedrich von Stunskatzen. He's who? As Friedrich von Gunstatzen. He said, I want to ask you, Shecky, is that a real name? I said, no, Ed, we'll make up any kind of name. Okay. So he introduced me, and I go on television. And I says, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to apologize to anybody I hurt before I even get on. I am German. The war was not my fault, but I met Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Sullivan told me he was bringing me back to the United States on his 11th anniversary of his show. And there I studied Mr. Sullivan, and I found out why he's been on television 11 years. He doesn't sing, he doesn't dance, he doesn't tell jokes, he don't do nothing, Mr. Sullivan. And that's why, well, he come running out after, you dirty son of a bitch, you did it again. So I always had this thing with him, you know. And then there's another thing that goes on, that's a classic, but I can't tell it now. And but later on, as Sylvia died and everything else, and he would come out, or I'd be with him, and it was very lonely, very unhappy man, but he was something else. He was the biggest. He was the biggest. And if you did the Sullivan Show, you're in. Now the kids that do television, there is so much television, and there's so many comedy. I mean, every show is a comedy show. This is a comedy show. That's a comedy show. That Drek with this, that's getting big. That show with I told you Lampanelli and Jeff Ross, and that is the most disgusting, disgraceful thing. And the thing I love, Betty White is who we idolize. And believe me, I work with Betty, and she, the most magnificent lady. But when I saw her on the show, zoop, I said, why? Just tell me why. I mean, the language they use, the insinuations they use, it's not funny. There may be some moron sitting at home thinking that's funny, but it's not funny. And I'm probably saying this because I couldn't get a date with Lisa Lampanelli. I wasn't black. Forgive me, black people, but what she does to you people on those shows. But I think when you get to finally, like in Vegas, they come to you and they say, we're going to give you $100,000. What? Now, when I got to 65, very interesting story. My hotel, the Riviera, which I had 2 points in, I didn't tell you about that. Earlier, they gave me my salary when I came back, plus 2 points. They want to bring in Don Rickles. And Don Rickles is going to get $65,000, and they're going to give me $60,000. So I went to the powers that be, and I said, he's going to get $65,000. I made this hotel. I kept it open by myself. I've got 2 points in the hotel, and you're going to give me $60,000? No. But I said, I am going to get this story out all over. I'm going to have it on AP, UP, SP. Sometimes I don't pee, sometimes it's tough to, But, so finally they said, yeah, you'll get that kind of money. Then we went to $75,000. Then we went to $100,000. And by that time, they weren't printing how good you were. They would print it, and this comic gets $100,000 a week, one of the highest paid comics in Las Vegas. Well, I used to hide from this thing. And I never, I had a secretary who was with me for years and years, English girl. I used to say, Linda, take the check. I don't want to see it. Because I was a gambler. I gambled on horses. And so I said, I don't want to see the check,
Don't you even, Shecky, don't you even want to look at it? Don't you want to see the zeros in the back?
I said, no, I don't want to see the zeros.
Oh, my goodness gracious. It certainly looks lovely.
So it was, and I got to a point, some jobs I liked, some jobs I didn't like. Vegas, I got tired of working Vegas. When they started bringing the French shows, I was very much into that. And I thought that was wonderful, 2 of them. But then they start bringing in the whatever these things are, from Canada, the guy with the Cirque du Soleil, and they got all water, and they wanted me for that show. They wanted me to be a lifeguard in that show. And I don't think it's a personal feeling anymore in Las Vegas. And the places are so big. You walk, you're going to go to meet somebody for lunch, you don't get there till dinner, And it's not a nice, warm place anymore. And they got gambling all over anyway, all over the country. They're going to put it in Utah. Now, the Mormons are going to gamble,